Meanwhile, those who are talking about transparency, we need transparency, we got to get to the bottom of it. People like James Comey, they're asking for public hearings so that they don't have to be transparent, so that all the people asking them questions are limited to 5 minutes or less. And then on top of that, think about what people like James Comey and the Senate Select Committee were doing to make sure that people like Julian Assange can stay out of the country so they do not come in and talk about what they knew about Russia. So you want to talk about transparency. The people who are running the investigation have done everything they can to make sure that all the facts don't come out.
This important update is brought to you in part by our friends at Rugged Reserves. Their Patriot flashlight is a must-have. Just think about it. When you pack your bug-out bag, you want everything from a glass-breaking hammer to a cell phone charger to a flashlight to a wire cutter and a compass. Well, you can get all of that and more with the Patriot flashlight. Light up the darkness with 500 lumens that can be seen miles away. And there's an emergency strobe with 4 unique lighting modes. And now the Patriot flashlight even has an emergency siren. And you know what the best part is? It's solar powered. So this bad boy will always have power when you need it most. It really does make the perfect Christmas gift. Get one for your bug-out bag, for your car, for your home. Just visit patriotflashlight.com. I'll leave the link below this video. And while supplies last, use promo code SGT25 to save 25% off your purchase. That's patriotflashlight.com. The link is below this video. Hey friends, thanks so very much for tuning in. I have an incredible treat for you. In fact, it's a treat filled with breaking news, thanks to my friend Frank from the Quite Frankly podcast. You know him from YouTube, Quite Frankly. We'll just jump to it right now. Frank, welcome.
Hey, what's going on? Great to be back, Sean.
It's great to have you back, man. And as you know, I had an agenda of things I wanted to talk about today. And then about a half hour ago, you sprang upon me this incredible clip from Instagram that we're going to just share with people live here. I've only watched a bit of it. We're going to watch it and process it. Her name is Tracy Jo Remington, and she posted this via Periscope, which was then posted on Instagram. And she apparently was married to a man who she says was knee-deep in child trafficking and pedophilia via the Clintons. And we're going to listen to that right now. Thanks for sending me that, by the way.
Hey, listen, I woke up this morning and one of the audience members sent it to me. And I said to myself, well, listen, this is crazy. Number one, I had to send it over to you and a couple other people just to see what they think about it. But the reason why I didn't want to wait on it is because, you know, there's a lot on the internet, people coming forward about all types of things now. People are feeling emboldened to come out and talk about their experiences. Everything needs to be vetted. You have to, you know, trust but verify, that kind of a thing. But this is recent. You can tell by all the things that are being referenced in this forthcoming video. This is recent stuff. So thought maybe, hey, it's something to add to the fire here to talk about.
Well, yeah, because what was on my agenda to talk about today is the fact that this new world order facade, this globalist narrative is absolutely falling apart at the seams. Look no further than the protests in France. These yellow vests are literally marching in the streets against Macron, the globalist puppet who they hate, and they're actually chanting, "We want Trump." So this entire globalist narrative is absolutely imploding, from Germany with Merkel to France with Macron to the United States with Clinton. So no better time for whistleblowers to come out and speak truth. All right, this is Tracy Jo Remington, evidently, from Periscope. It was posted on Instagram. These are allegations, not yet to be proven, but would it surprise you one bit? Let me hit the share screen tab here.
That France, though. Got to talk about France.
Yeah, we'll circle back. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, I could.
All right, here she comes.
Here I am. The Clinton Foundation Network is the largest child sex trafficking operation in the entire world. Liz Crokin is absolutely right. Now, I could lose my Twitter for this too, but I really don't care. Now, my ex-husband, Remington, out of McMinnville, Oregon, was the Clinton Foundation Network's child pornographer. I discovered he was producing pornography in 2008. We had an altercation. I actually shot past him with my Glock 19. I shot past him and I spent 16 and a half months in prison for one gunshot, but he had beaten me for 6 days. I am the one that called the police. I am the one that went down in that town where the satanic cult of the Clinton Foundation Network was headquarters. He was at the center of he was the spider in the center of the web, okay?
Frank, did you hear that?
Yes.
Okay, so that was clip number one. Her husband apparently is, her ex-husband evidently is Gregory Vern Remington, I believe she said. Any comments on that before we continue?
No, all I will say is that Honeybee, who was doing work, I think that did some work with her and took her story and confirmed a lot of this stuff through the newspaper reports of the incident she's talking about, with her firing a solitary shot across the bow of her husband that she had uncovered. I forget if she goes into how she uncovered all of this stuff, but like I said, once I saw this and I saw the emotion here, I figured I'd send it along. So I'm watching a lot of this with fresh eyes with you.
All right, and I don't know if I have to hit share screen again or if I can just play this. I don't suppose you can see my screen.
I still see it.
You do. All right, here it comes. Clip 2.
Husband was their main child pornographer. His title was the Baby King, okay? A lot of people need to understand who he was. There's only 7 people in here. That's fine. I just want to get this out to Twitter to let you guys know. God, the lighting is terrible on me. To let you guys know that Liz Crockett is correct. Everything she says is right on. And Liz, I want to tell you, if you listen to me right now, if you hear me, I want to tell you that I am sorry if I sent you too much stuff, but I was a private investigator for years. And, you know, when I see people like you and I see people like Honeybee, I am the one that's going to send you guys things, backdoor you things, because I have been dealing with this for a very long time. And I found out the FBI, the cops, the sheriffs in McMinnville, Oregon, were all a part of it.
Yeah, I'll pause it there. You know, I appreciate her getting out there with evidently her version of truth. And it wouldn't surprise us a bit, Frank, because it was Andrew Breitbart who in February of 2011 tweeted out that John Podesta is a world-class underage sex slave, Operation Cover-Upper, defending unspeakable drugs, basically calling him a child trafficker or one that covers up for child trafficking. Would it surprise you at all to know this stuff is going on?
No, it wouldn't. And I'll tell you, the more we see of this stuff, and the more it all starts coming together, it's just, you can tell that the world is held together by blackmail, number one, and a blackmail that is going to be strong enough to hold all of this crap together for however many generations it's been. You have to be dealing with some of the worst things you can ever conceive of happening to humanity itself. So this is not somebody cheating on their taxes. This is not about somebody placing a bet on a baseball team that they own or manage. This isn't Pete Rose kind of stuff. We're talking about big things here, and there are certain topics that keep making the rounds. And when you see this come out and you hear this, it gives you pause. It really gives me pause, that's for sure.
Well, I think what's interesting, and I think everybody's waking up to the fact that, and Q has said this, the mainstream Mockingbird media is truly the enemy of the people because they are the gatekeepers to prevent people from seeing the truth, right? They did the same thing regarding Pizzagate and all of those Podesta emails, which basically stitched together a fabric, a blanket, a roadmap which told us that these people are into child sex trafficking. And then CNN called it fake news without ever debunking a single element of that story.
Others latched onto this, seemingly hoping it was true, scouring dark corners of the web for possible clues. This is how conspiracy theories are threaded together, lie by lie. Eventually a name stuck, Pizzagate, and the believers started harassing the owner of the pizza place.
And we see the same thing going on with these protests in France. They say people are marching in the streets not because they hate globalism and Macron and open borders, but because of high gas prices. You know, people are waking up, Frank, and the mainstream media truly is the enemy of the people.
Oh, listen, when you talk about France for a second, that right there, just to have a couple of weeks ago, Macron go and tell France and the rest of the world that nationalism is pretty much treason. And when you see an ancient city burning to the ground, or not burning to the ground, but burning, cars, there's structure fires out there. And it's not just relegated to Paris either. Because of taxation, it makes you suspect that people have fallen out of love with the concept of taxation and redistribution, at least just a little bit. And I think that the thing that really gets me the most is you bring up the media spin on all of this. It is starting to look like more and more, as we've seen in Sweden when people are trying to report on the uptick in violent crime and sex crime and the balkanization of societies out there with no-go zones and the ghettoizing of all these refugee camps and the welfare states that are being produced. And, it really comes around to one thing. Whether it is local media or whether it is international media, the will of the people is being ignored. The sentiments of the people are being ignored, and it's being spun into something that it is not true. Because here we have a city, we have a country that is very progressive socially, and they always have been very progressive socially. But it is hard to say now that these people are really embracing what globalism means. Whatever Paris wants to do, whatever, as a city, or France as a nation wants to do on their own, they should be able to do whatever the hell they want. They are French. That's the whole thing here. But this is not just about this is not a tax on gas. This is not a tax on gas. And that is exactly what is being leaned on right now as a crutch to try to explain why people are trying to throw off these globalist ticks and leeches in ways that had earlier been thought just inconceivable.
Well, you know what? Not only are people not embracing this globalist narrative, they're rejecting it outright all over the EU. All right, so we have got Brexit happening in the UK. It should at least happen. And then look what's going on in Germany. Merkel is absolutely losing her iron-fisted grip of control there, basically should probably resign. And meanwhile, she's saying the people of Germany need to get ready to give up their sovereignty to the bureaucrats in Brussels. Literally, she just said that recently. And these people are absolute puppets, and the puppet masters above them in Brussels, the puppet masters above them at the World Bank, the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements, all Rothschild international banking cabal owned. These people are puppets, and people are waking up to that important fact, just as they did in our election when people rejected Hillary Clinton because she was a Soros puppet. And who probably do you think is the puppet master above Soros? Probably the Rothschilds, would be my guess. I mean, Soros is certainly a general in the New World Order army, but he's not the king sitting at the top.
No, the people that we think are at the top are probably all middle management. That's for damn sure. And when you're talking about Merkel, you talk about France, you talk about just the basis of this gasoline tax, where everybody, you're talking about this is the city that gave the Paris Climate Accord agreement, that whole agreement, its name. And
by the way, let me just jump in. You're absolutely right to say that about the gas tax, because what they are trying to do is, quote unquote, what Bill Gates said, innovate to zero. This is all about climate change, carbon taxes, reducing our ability to have energy, Agenda 21, UN Agenda 2030 policies, to turn us all into serfs. Because when we're all poor, then we're all equal. They talk about equality. They talk about raising the third world up. No, what they want to do is destroy the first world and bring us down. Because if they don't give us new forms of energy to replace the ones they want to take away, they will raise gas prices to $7, $8, $9, $10, $20 a gallon like they're doing in France. And the people are rejecting it, thank God.
Yeah, and you know what? Going on that port too. Recently, I read recently the UN climate chief, that Patricia Espinosa woman. She went on to say once again, because whether we're talking about Robert Mueller and we're talking about Russia, we're talking about whatever the hell it is, whether it's just the failure of a policy that has been put forward by these collectivists, the one thing you can guarantee you will never ever get is the admission that they were wrong. The admission that maybe their idea for reaching a cleaner, more sustainable Earth was the wrong idea. Maybe we should go in another direction. No, you're never going to get that. And just recently, I had read how Patricia Espinosa was talking about how climate change impacts had never been worse, and that the impacts of climate change are increasingly hard to ignore, and that here's the quote that really got me, that we require deep transformations of our economies and societies. And if you look no further than stuff like that to see what exactly we're talking about here. And I don't even know where you can go, where you can take this. You're not going to get an admission. So what I think everybody is starting to realize in the UN is, whereas, or the EU, I mean, whereas the EU might have at first, for some people, seemed like a really nice notion, like a kumbaya circle where everybody's holding hands and they're doing their thing and they're uniting as one Europe, even though they are Frenchmen, they are German, they are Austrian, they are all these, they're Hungarian, whatever it is, they're all in it for a common good. I think right around now, people are starting to realize that as they're clasping each other's hands and they try to loosen the grip, they realize that they're actually being held together by handcuffs. And that right there, this realization is starting to give pause to a lot of people who are now trying to struggle to break free, realizing that this great idea that we all have witnessed that part of the world voluntarily enter into, they can no longer voluntarily leave. I mean, look at what kind of traps, the bear traps that are being set in front of Brits who want to leave. How the hell is it that an international community can dictate the terms for which Britain is able to say, you know what, I think we're going our own way. Breach the contract, just walk away. What, nobody's going to trade with the UK? It's unbelievable. It's the gangsterism that is going on out there, and how I mean, the mask has been taken off in such an ugly way, and it's coming out, and no matter what the topic be, whether it be the climate change, but that is just the minimal aspect of it. Climate change is only one aspect of all this stuff when it comes down to the migrant crisis and the way that intelligence services have been ruling and destabilizing the world. It really is amazing to see how it all is coming together now, though, in such a public way, because this is something that I'm sure that the old timers who have been following this for many more years before us were more frustrated than anything, because at that point, the media was centralized. Right now, the media is becoming so decentralized and scattered that they cannot whack all of the moles that are coming up to really paint a story of a parallel history that has been unfolding before us this entire time, that very many people weren't able to see, because they're getting all their news from the Walter Cronkites of the world.
Yeah, well, the media is more centralized now than ever, but they're losing their control because of the decentralization of the real media, the alternative media. People are coming to you and to me and to other truth tellers on YouTube and all over the internet in droves because they're sick of being lied to. And you used a very good word, an effective word, gangsterism. That's what it is. This New World Order is a mafia, and their playbook is to lie, cheat, and steal. And when they get caught, they just lie, cheat, and steal some more. And I think one of the best examples of that, one of the best recent examples of that out of the elections in the United States was down there in Broward County, where Brenda Snipes committed a felony in the primaries by destroying ballots, which Tim Canova was by far and away the front runner against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the closed Democratic primary. I believe he had 8,000 votes of people leaning toward him and 13,000 that were strongly for him. Debbie Wasserman Schultz only had 5,000. The votes were flipped, and when he wanted to go and inspect the ballots, which is his constitutional right to do so, Brenda Snipes destroyed those ballots. It's a felony, and she never went to jail for it. She was never punished for that felony. And now, you want to talk about a hero? Tim Canova is now contesting Debbie Wasserman Schultz's victory in that election for that congressional seat. He wants the votes thrown out. He wants the election thrown out, and he wants a new election. So, guys, if you want to get behind a truth teller and somebody who's got a lot of courage, my God, Tim Canova is his name. Google it. Go to his website and support him in this legal battle. He's going to need our financial help. But I'll tell you what, there's no better example of a mafioso than Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a foot soldier to Hillary Clinton and the Clintons.
Oh, yeah. And let me, it's one thing to be able to go back and say, hey, something fishy happened in this election. Let's get this turned around, or let's see what really was going on. But as far as Brenda Snipes go, was somebody who's like so low on the totem pole. When you're talking about a county election staffer, I know that she has quite a nice pension coming her way, but if you can't even bring somebody like that to justice, where the hell is the deterrent anywhere for anybody?
I know.
To not try this in the future.
$130,000 a year she's supposed to get as a pension. Now, I've heard that she may not be getting that because she was fired, but she ought not be getting it because she's a felon and she should be in prison, not collecting $130,000 a year from the taxpayers. Yeah, no, that's how broken this system is, man. And people are getting so fed up. I guess, we Americans ought to take a page out of the playbook from those people in France. I mean, my hat's off to these people getting off their butts and getting into the streets and marching. And Macron is probably scared to death because the people in France, these are the type of people that probably show up at his house and string him up from a lamppost.
Oh, listen, when I was reading this, and I had to pull this aside just in case that we spoke about this today. But when I read this, and I know The Guardian is The Guardian, but first of all, to see the spin that that Macron has put out there, these are paid protesters. We heard that. So now you have a globalists on the very, very far left are talking about paid protesters. When you look down to what they're saying, I thought this was really something else over here. Here's from the Guardian. It says Macron flew back from the G20 summit in Argentina on Sunday and went straight to inspect damage at the Arc de Triomphe. Graffiti all over the base of the 19th century monument read, "We've chopped off heads for less than this and toppled the bourgeoisie. Scores of used tear gas canisters filled the gutters, etc., etc." That is not the words. That is not the phrase of people, of paid protesters. Those are the phrases that the French are. Those are not refugees. That is nothing. That is what the French are saying right now. That is going back. That is the equivalent of seeing "Don't Tread on Me" spray painted on the Lincoln Memorial over here in the U.S. This is real. These are people who are saying this is our money. These are not leftist this is not Occupy Wall Street that was going out and asking for this service, that service, and that service right now. What they're asking for is relief from the taxation of their own money, their income. They're not asking for anything from anybody else. They're not asking for a raise in their welfare benefits like we see coming from a lot of the refugees out there. But these are people who are actually providing the money. They're saying this is ours and we want to keep more of it. That is a huge, huge thing that is being missed here. People are saying they want more of what is already theirs. They're not being asked for a pacifier. And I think it's really created a fascinating thing to watch over here from afar. And I'm rooting on our French cousins there.
Hey, I'm noticing your shirt there, House Stark, Game of Thrones, and it reminds me of the bank, what is the name of the bank? The Bank of Westeros? Is that what it is? The Iron Bank of Westeros.
Iron Bank. Yep.
Yeah. See, this is the theme in Game of Thrones, which is the exact same theme of today. The bank always wins, right? They'll get both sides warring or multiple sides warring, but at the end of the day, it's the bank that always wins, and that's a reoccurring theme in Game of Thrones. It is exactly the theme that's playing out in our world today. If we could dethrone these international bankers who rule by fiat, we could live. I mean, I've said this a million times before, Frank. This world could be a paradise. It could be an Eden. But these malevolent demons have wanted to create this sort of conflict between humanity, between tribes, between races, because if they can keep us warring with each other, they can keep themselves in power. And I think at the end of the day, they're starting to lose that iron-fisted grip. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the Russiagate fable. I've got a great clip from Dan Bongino I want to play. Let me find that clip.
You got it.
All right, here it comes. This is Dan Bongino talking about the fact that it's all about to hit the fan. Here's the clip.
They're going to say, well, I didn't know. This guy did it. Comey did it. McCabe did it. We didn't do it. Why? Because they are desperate to preserve the reputation of the FBI and DOJ. I told you that was the purpose of the Mueller probe from day one, to come in here and sweep all of this garbage under the rug and preserve the reputation of the Department of Justice and the FBI at all costs.
Frank, does the Department of Justice, or specifically the FBI, have any credibility left at all? I do believe there's some white hats within the FBI. They're not all bad, but the people at the top in this Mueller investigation, my God, when you want to talk about the mafia and the mafioso, there's no better example than Mueller in this bogus investigation into our president's supposed collusion with Russians and Putin.
No way in hell. There's no comparison. You want to take a look at what his primary focus even was. The genesis of this Russia story has been It's just been empty calories from the beginning. There's nothing there. This would be the equivalent of basing a 3 square meal a day diet on cotton candy. There is nothing, has never been there. Launched by a campaign of whispers between, CIA and intelligence chiefs. Which, if you think that it started there, you're beyond help. If you think that John Brennan was the one who independently said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to help launder in some whispers and some rumors in from the UK with Robert Hannigan, and we're gonna get all this all going without some kind of a wink and a nod from the executive. I mean, so even from the beginning here, you see all the people who are handling it. You see what was going on, how people like George Papadopoulos and Carter Page were used, whether they are patsies or plants, it doesn't matter. I made the joke a week ago or so. George Papadopoulos was passed around like a joint at a Phil Lesh concert. One person whispers in his ear, flushes him out to the next person, and they try to take the whisperings out of the other ear. I mean, it's ridiculous, the entire thing. And then you get back down to who is in charge of now the investigation, Mueller, and what he and people like Rosenstein are really a part of, and what this all distracts from, and what it has provided up until this point. They failed in the midterms by taking over, not being able to take over both the House and Senate and getting rid of Trump through impeachment. They failed in that respect, and now all we are going to get out of this is a story. All we're going to get out of this is a narrative-based story, largely for public consumption. And the report is going to be 100% narrative-based. It's not going to be rooted in anything criminal. And then Democrats will finally have something to run on in 2020 because, of course, abolish ICE didn't work too well. And that's all this is about. And Michael Cohen, my God, what a year. What a year that doofus bastard has had. 2018, 3 times this guy has tried everything he can to get out of the rightful prison time that is coming his way for all of his dubious financial dealings. You know, we're going through round 3 right now of Michael Cohen making a rollicking ass out of himself. First time pleading guilty to campaign finance crimes that don't exist, and then being a part of that whole Lanny Davis situation in August, where alongside of CNN and Carl Bernstein, they used themselves as primary and secondary sources to lie about the Trump Tower meetings and the timing of WikiLeaks and who knew about what. There was that. And now we're dealing with this again, where he's talking about a private citizen looking into, building a tower in another country while they were still private citizens. But because that is something that could be latched onto to build up that cloud of suspicion around the initial narrative, a narrative that was pretty much picked out of a hat by people like John Podesta. It really is an amazing story to be told. And meanwhile, those who are talking about transparency, we need transparency, we got to get to the bottom of it. People like James Comey, they're asking for public hearings so that they don't have to be transparent, so that all the people asking them questions are limited to 5 minutes or less. And then on top of that, think about what people like James Comey and the Senate Select Committee were doing to make sure that people like Julian Assange can stay out of the country so that they do not come in and talk about what they knew about Russia, all the while trading, sources and methods in Vault 7. That was an acceptable price to pay to keep Julian Assange out of the country. So you want to talk about transparency. The people who are running the investigation have done everything they can to make sure that all the facts don't come out.
Yeah, because all of the facts point directly to them. Everything they've accused this president of doing is what they themselves are guilty of doing. Colluding with Russia, Uranium One, all measures of sedition and treason. And you mentioned Assange. It was Kim.com who offered to come here and testify under oath to Mueller about the information he had that proves that Seth Rich was the DNC email leaker. Seth Rich, not Russian hackers. It was Seth Rich, and they whacked him for it. It's these same globalist demons. And I guess at the end of the day, one thing we can be grateful for is that these people can't live forever. David Rockefeller, dead. George H.W. Bush, dead. These people don't get to live forever. I think that's what kills me, man. When you think about the depth of their evil? Well, the pedophilia, the child sex trafficking, the depths of their evil is so off the charts, Frank. I do not understand how these people sleep at night unless they have truly sold their souls to Satan and embraced that entire idea. They think they're going to get their reward in the afterlife. I'm here to tell you, David Rockefeller and George H.W. Bush are now paying the spiritual price for their crimes they committed while their hearts were beating. In the afterlife, forever. I firmly believe that. I guess these people, these demons, believe the afterlife holds some magical treasure in hell for them. They must actually believe that to operate so fully, so filled with evil while they're here on this planet. That's the part I can't get my arms around.
I wonder how many of them actually have had that reasoning that there is something else coming for them. I have to imagine that there's a lot of, how can you not look back on a life that you spent wheeling and dealing and doing whatever the hell to enrich
killing and murder and drug dealing and victimizing families and snatching kids and pedophilia, destroying the inner city, destroying black families. Remember how strong black families were in the 60s when Martin Luther King spoke in Washington, D.C.? Go look at that footage. Those were all strong, proud, nuclear black families. Now, what is the illegitimacy rate in inner cities? 70%? 80%?
75%.
This is all CIA drug running, man. They caused all of this. Divide and conquer.
But let me just say on top of that, I love listening and reading people like Walter Williams and Jason Riley and Larry Elder, of course, Thomas Sowell, and reading people who have actually gone into depth about what this has been about, how they can make such profound statements about how the black family was actually able to survive slavery, but they weren't able to survive the welfare state. And in that kind of respect, yes, they were playing with a little bit of a handicap because, when the Great Society was put forward, they were already higher up in the illegitimacy rate because of the problems that they had faced culturally in the antebellum South and coming out of the 19th century. But from there, like you said, you're seeing that balloon to 75% illegitimacy rates, broken homes, but even white families, they're around a 40% rate now too. This is something where it doesn't matter about race anymore. Race has become a winning ticket. Whenever you're out there trying to garner votes, you do whatever you want, but the whole notion of this is full spectrum dominance over everybody, all things, using whatever tools that are available to you. It is a really big class warfare thing. If you're elite, if you are in part of that elite group, it doesn't matter if the people below you are black and white. You look at all of them as insects. That's exactly what's going on here. So we've moved out of one phase into another phase. They've kind of expanded. They want to hook everybody in that net. It is a financial slavery. It is a different type of feudalism right now. And I just wish that nuance would be opened up in a little bit more of a cultural way when we talk about things like race, because it really does restrict us in what we're able to get across. There's so many people out there that think that the impacts of slavery in this country, even though it was a global phenomenon, and especially that was starting to be phased out in the Western hemisphere, in the Western civilizations throughout the 19th century. But it's still around, there's still 30 to 40 million slaves living in the world today, mostly in the parts of the world that they're trying to import people from, to be able to replace the populations of people who are dying out because they're giving themselves over to the false song of socialism. And it just seems to be that nobody wants to have kids or start families anymore under socialism. It's a very interesting thing that goes hand in hand. But what I wanted to get around to and actually wrap up with is that is why we need to be able to have these nuanced conversations, because it is spun in a way where you are actually invalidating the claims of the impacts of slavery and the handicap that it put on black families around the country coming out of the 19th century into the 20th. You don't have to deny any of that horror. You don't have to deny any of the horror of federally mandated, federally enforced segregation.
Yeah, but you know what, Frank? That whole topic is a divide and conquer topic. It's black versus white. They want the races fighting because look what's happening right now in Libya, where that witch cackled about we came, we saw, he died. They've turned Libya into an absolute hellhole where now human trafficking of people of all color, men, women, and children, is off the charts. That didn't exist under Gaddafi, where he was trying to green the desert with one of the world's most epic water projects. And that demon, Hillary Clinton and NATO, came in and blew the place up, just like we did to Iraq, just like they did to Afghanistan, just like they've done all over the world. And I think the world is finally getting fed up, Frank. And I guess that's the best news, is that people are waking up and we're starting to recognize the real puppet masters. We know Clinton is a puppet, and above her are puppet masters. And people are starting to reject the New World Order in droves all over the world. And I think that's what has the puppet masters scared to death. When you watch people in France protest day after day after day, and then the police are sent in to try to quell those protests, but then the police start to take off their helmets and stand in solidarity with the protesters, nothing will put the fear of God in the dark hearts of these evil people like that.
It's just a matter of what are they going to replace it with? Are they getting the right message out of all this? That is why it's important when you see these wrecking ball movements. I always make that allegory. It's the wrecking ball and the scalpel for me. Donald Trump was the wrecking ball. We had a brick wall that needed to come down. He was anti-politically correct, and he was the only chance of saving our judiciary compared to what Hillary Clinton would have brought in, which would have been the end of everything. And
it would have been the final nail.
It would have been the final nail.
She would have been the final nail. And so for anybody who says, oh, he's just playing his role, that really still befuddles me, because the simplest plan in the world would have been to implement the witch and have her roll out the exact same policies that we see from Merkel and Macron. That's what she would have done. And if there's any hope we have at all, I want to hearken back to that exchange between Senator Lindsey Graham and Brett Kavanaugh during the Supreme Court Justice hearings with Kavanaugh, in which Graham asked Kavanaugh, is it constitutional in some instances to try people who have committed treason in a military court? And Kavanaugh said yes. And I think that what needs to happen, and I think it's happening behind the scenes, is we need indictments coming down on the most treacherous people, and we need them to endure military tribunals. And I'll share this bit of news with folks. I put it in my latest video, which we'll have posted right before this interview. This is from the Intelligencer. The Intelligencer, Wheeling News Register. 305th Military Police Company deploys more than 100 soldiers, military police, to Guantanamo for a 400-day deployment. What do you think are the chances that we're going to see any of these high-level criminals actually tried for their crimes, perhaps in military courts?
Well, the chances, based on a lot of the people that I talk to and what I read, I hope they're right when they say that the chances are high. Me, I like being a silent observer and watching all this, and there are pieces that are being arranged on the board right now, and you have to wonder what it's being in preparation for. Let me ask you a question, though. What do you think? It gives me a little bit. I just brought this up with my buddy Chris before I came here. What would have to be done to make sure that these people are pardon-proof? Because if you think that the frustration people are feeling right now in wondering where the indictments are, when the hammer is going to fall, when several hammers are going to fall, there's going to be nothing that matches the frustration of feeling like you've made some kind of progress in taking players off of the board and into jail, only to have a couple of years go by, and one day there will be a puppet back in office. What happens if there is a pardon? We start seeing the pardoning of people, and there has to be a way that whatever is done and whoever goes to jail, and there's many people that need to go to jail, that it has to be pardon proof. The case against them needs to be so damning that anybody that even tries to go near sniffing the idea of pardoning anybody, it has to be impossible to pardon people. That's the only thing I've been thinking about
Frank?
Than that, I'm always hopeful. I'm always hopeful. And the reason why I am hopeful is because there are people like you. There are people like those who watch you who are interested in this, and we have gone and we've been able to bring this to the fore and create more people who are willing to put more pressure and create new generations of those who look at world events, look at history, look at our country with new sets of eyes and approach things from different points of view instead of one myopic mainstream media way of digesting the world. And I think that one last thing I would say on that subject, and what gives me hope, is that the one thing I can say honestly now is that when I go and I do a show every night, and then I see that my opinions are shared by so many people who have their Twitter accounts, their blogs, their own podcasts, whatever it is, it's showing me and it's affirming to me that for so long there were many people out there who were thinking the way that we all do, and were sharing the same kind of, doubts about everything. But for so long, we were only able to get access to one type of media, one type of opinion, until we were given the chance to then become that media. And now you see where the interpretations and all of the ways that people are looking at the news and world history, the opinions and the views are so varied, and they are actually keeping each other in check, and people are actually learning again. There's a difference between people like you and I and those who defend the mainstream media official stories. They are intellectually inept. They don't even see how they contradict themselves from moment to moment, because the only thing that matters is sticking to the pre-made conclusions about the world. You and I are considering some of the most heinous things that have ever been proposed, because it's better to consider what we have all out in front of us instead of, it can only be one thing. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. So that's the thing that really gives me hope that the pain really is coming, because I think there's a lot less people who are willing to roll over and take it now.
Just real quickly, to answer your question about pardons, again, I think that exchange between Senator Lindsey Graham and Brett Kavanaugh was very, very telling. There is the possibility that some of these people who have committed the most heinous forms of treason might actually be put to death, and that would take care of the problem of pardoning, the issue of them being pardoned. And again, I think Trump needs to get reelected for another 4 years, but best case scenario, we only have 6 years left of President Trump, and I don't know who could step up to fill his shoes after that. But the good news is, Frank, the left has nobody. I mean, they have nobody. Did you see the Clintons trying to do their world tour, their 13-city tour, and nobody shows up to see them speak? It's just the whole narrative from the left is absolutely imploding, as is the New World Order narrative of globalism. And thank God we have a president who says he will not sell the nation out to the false song of globalism. At the end of the day, people are waking up, and that's the best news. Our guest has been Frank from the Quite Frankly podcast and on YouTube. When can people catch your show live, Frank?
Sean, I am live Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. It's a live interactive show. I take a lot of calls, and you can find all the information on the show, where to see it live. There's 3 platforms I'm on when we go live, and then everything else is put into podcast form afterwards. And that can all be found on quitefranklypodcast.com. And and Sean, let me just say one last thing on the Clinton tour, because it ties into my thoughts on Mueller too. If you're able to just assess what is going on, going into 2016 in that election, I didn't care what the hell the news was telling me about the chances of Hillary Clinton winning. I knew that she had already stolen one election, the primary, the Democratic primary. So she already stole one election, and I'm looking at how there is zero enthusiasm for her on the ground. And there's still zero enthusiasm for her right now as they go on this multi-city tour and nobody's showing up. This should just be even more of, affirmation for people that she was an awful, awful candidate. Awful candidate. She pushed herself in there. She bullied herself in there. She was probably only accepted because the DNC was so broke and destitute from the 8 years of Obama. How he was the only one that walked away from his own presidency, not smoldering ash. He's the only one that survived his presidency. Democrats took hits from coast to coast, but the media preserved Obama. Even the party was broke, but she came in, she propped it up with all of her money because they are really good fundraisers, aren't they? Or at least they were. And here you go. There's more reason to think that Donald Trump needed Russians to go and steal an election from Hillary Clinton. She was awful and still is. Democrats are begging her to go away. Oh,
Yeah.
All the evidence that you ever need is right in front of you all day, every day.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's hilarious. You look at those rallies he had when he was running for president, and he was just filling arenas like he still does, and she couldn't fill the corner of a high school gym. But the Russians helped steal it for Trump. Yeah, it's just a joke. Just the entire fable. That's all they have left is to sell the American people lies. That's all they have. They're bankrupt. They're morally and spiritually bankrupt, Frank, and I think they're going to pay the price. All right, guys, our guest has been Frank from the Quite Frankly podcast. Thanks so much for your time, brother.
No problem. No problem. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Merry Christmas early. And guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Spread this information, spread this video in your own sphere of influence on social media, and we very much appreciate your support. Thanks for checking us out, too, for real news 24/7 at sgtreport.com. God bless. Bye-bye.
You're going to see arrests, and then you're going to see indictments, and then you're going to see convictions. They are scared to death.